Imagine a perfectly ordinary morning. You wake up, pour yourself a cup of coffee, but as you try to lift it, your hand suddenly trembles and the cup nearly slips from your grasp. You think to yourself, maybe my arm's just sore, I must have slept wrong. But what you don't realize is, this could be an early warning sign of a stroke. In this video, we're going to uncover together the silent but dangerous signs of stroke that most people overlook. Real-life stories from America, where a single quick decision saved an entire life. And most importantly, how you or someone you love can recognize these signals before it's too late. I know the word stroke often feels distant until it strikes someone in our own family. So if remembering just a few simple signs could save your life, or the life of someone you love, wouldn't you want to learn them today? Then let's begin this journey of uncovering 10 early warning signs of stroke small signals that can decide the course of an entire life. 1. The silent threat. Why stroke can strike without warning. When people hear the word stroke, they often imagine something sudden, striking like lightning. And it's true. A stroke can happen anytime, while you're watching TV, gardening, or even laughing with your grandchildren. What makes it so dangerous is that it often doesn't come with clear warning signs. And if it does, they're easy to dismiss. Blamed on fatigue, aging, or just a bad night's sleep. I remember a story from Ohio. A 67-year-old man named Robert recalled that one morning, as he picked up the TV remote, his fingers suddenly became clumsy, pressing the wrong buttons again and again. He thought it was just temporary numbness. A few hours later, Robert suffered a full-blown stroke. Thankfully, his family called 911 just in time. The doctors later said that if he had waited only 30 more minutes, he might never have walked normally again. The lesson here is clear. Stroke doesn't just attack the frail elderly. It can strike even when we think we're just a little tired. Every small signal deserves our attention. And this is only the beginning. If stroke is the silent threat, then what are the clearest signals our body tries to send us? Let's start with the most common and most visible one, when half of your body suddenly stops listening. 2. Weakness and numbness. When half your body doesn't listen. One of the most obvious signs of stroke is when half of your body suddenly refuses to cooperate. It might be one side of the face drooping, an arm that won't lift, or a leg that suddenly feels heavy and weak. This happens because when a blood vessel in the brain gets blocked, oxygen and nutrients can't reach the areas that control movement. The body reacts instantly with weakness or paralysis on one side. What makes it especially alarming is that it often comes on suddenly. You're perfectly fine one moment, and just seconds later, you can't move the way you used to. I once heard about Linda, a 72-year-old woman from Texas. One afternoon, while preparing dinner, she reached for a frying pan and realized her right arm simply wouldn't lift. At the same moment, the corner of her mouth began to droop. Luckily, her daughter was there and immediately remembered the fast rule. They called 911 right away, and because of that quick action, Linda received timely treatment and made an almost complete recovery. The lesson here: if part of your body suddenly loses strength, treat it as an SOS from your brain. Don't assume it's just a cramp or tired muscles. Your body is shouting for you to pay attention. And often, when the body stops listening, another frightening sign appears right alongside it. Familiar words suddenly come out jumbled, distorted, or don't come out at all. Let's explore that in the next part. 3. Speech trouble, words that suddenly won't come out. Language is the bridge that connects us to the world. But when stroke strikes, that bridge can collapse in seconds. You want to speak, but the words come out slurred. You want to reply, but while your thoughts are clear, your mouth refuses to cooperate. This is one of the classic signs of stroke. Speech trouble. Medically speaking, this happens when areas of the brain that control language, like Broca's or Wernicke's region, are deprived of blood. That's why both speaking and understanding language can suddenly fail. Some people can't articulate words, while others hear them but can't process their meaning. I recall a story from Florida. An elderly man named James was on the phone with his son when suddenly his voice turned into incoherent mumbling. At first, his son thought he was joking, until the sounds became slurred and confusing. Thankfully, the son suspected something serious, called 911 immediately, and that quick decision saved James from severe damage. The lesson here: never ignore sudden changes in speech or comprehension. It's not just temporary stuttering or old age. It may be the earliest alarm bell of a stroke. And if stroke can steal your words, it can also rob your sight. Imagine one day, the world before you suddenly turns blurry, dark, or even split in two. That's the next sign we'll uncover, when your eyes suddenly betray you. 4. Vision changes when the world goes blurry or dark. Our eyes are the windows to the soul, but when stroke strikes, those windows can slam shut without warning. One of the most overlooked signs of stroke is sudden vision changes. Blurriness, blindness in one eye, or double vision that makes everything seem out of place. This happens when stroke affects the blood vessels feeding the back of the brain, the area responsible for vision. When oxygen is cut off, the brain can't properly process signals from the eyes, and the world becomes distorted or darkened. Take Martha, a 68-year-old from Florida. One evening, while reading the newspaper, she noticed that the words on the left half of the page had completely vanished. At first, she thought her eyes were tired or maybe she needed new glasses, but just 20 minutes later, she felt dizzy and fell off her chair. Her family called 911 immediately, and doctors confirmed it was a posterior circulation stroke. Thanks to their quick action, Martha avoided permanent vision loss. The lesson: blurred vision isn't always about age or eyeglasses. If it happens suddenly, think stroke. Don't wait until tomorrow to check it out, because sometimes tomorrow may be too late. And if vision can betray you, so can your balance. Steps that once felt steady may suddenly wobble, as if you're walking on a tightrope. That's the next signal we'll explore, when your body loses its familiar sense of balance and coordination. Balance and coordination, when walking feels like a tightrope. We often take walking for granted, climbing a few steps, picking vegetables in the garden, or simply standing up to grab a glass of water. But when stroke strikes, these everyday actions can suddenly turn into a challenge. One of the most important yet often overlooked warning signs is loss of balance and coordination. Medically speaking, this happens when stroke affects the cerebellum, the part of the brain that controls balance and coordination. When blood flow is interrupted, the body suddenly loses its ability to stay steady. The person may stumble, feel dizzy, or even fall without knowing why. I recall the story of Michael, a 64-year-old from California. One morning, as he was getting ready to walk his dog, he suddenly felt his legs give way. Every step felt like he was walking on a tightrope, swaying side to side, nearly collapsing onto the sidewalk. He thought it was just a little low blood pressure and tried to rest. Luckily, a neighbor noticed something was wrong and called an ambulance right away. Doctors confirmed it was a cerebellar stroke, and that quick decision saved Michael from long-term paralysis. The lesson here: never dismiss sudden unsteadiness. If your body loses its usual coordination, treat it as an emergency signal. Don't wait for it to pass. Act immediately, because every minute lost means brain cells are dying. And if the body warns us through imbalance, there's another equally dangerous sign, often arriving like a sudden storm inside the head, a thunderous headache, faster and fiercer than anything you've ever felt before. Let's explore that in the next part. 6. Thunderclap headache, the pain you should never ignore. Some headaches come and go, relieved with rest. But then there are headaches that strike like a thunderclap, sudden, explosive, and unbearable. Doctors call this a thunderclap headache, and it may be one of the most dangerous signs of stroke, especially a hemorrhagic stroke. The reason is simple. When a blood vessel in the brain bursts or an aneurysm suddenly leaks, blood spills into areas where it doesn't belong. Pressure rises instantly, and the body reacts with searing pain, often described as the worst headache of my life. I remember Sarah, a 35-year-old from New York. One afternoon while working, she suddenly felt as if a hammer had struck her skull. The pain was so intense and so sudden that she collapsed to the floor. Her co-workers panicked and called 911. The diagnosis? A subarachnoid hemorrhage, a dangerous form of bleeding stroke. Because she reached the hospital within 15 minutes, doctors were able to intervene and save her from life-threatening complications. The lesson: never ignore a sudden, severe headache that feels unlike any you've had before. It's not just stress, not just lack of sleep. Sometimes, it's your brain's most urgent cry for help. And then, there are other stroke symptoms that are not as dramatic as weakness or thunderous pain, but just as dangerous. Subtle, confusing, and often overlooked. We'll uncover those next. 7. Beyond the obvious lesser-known stroke symptoms. When most people think of stroke, they picture the classic signs: a drooping face, a weak arm, or slurred speech. But here's a lesser-known truth. Not all strokes follow the same script. Sometimes, the signs are vague, unexpected, and dangerously easy to dismiss. Some people may suddenly experience nausea and vomiting as if they had food poisoning. Others may become confused, lose awareness for a moment, or even faint or have seizures. These symptoms are often linked to strokes in the brainstem or deeper regions of the brain areas that control alertness and essential life functions. I recall the case of George, a 59-year-old from Michigan. One evening, he complained of feeling tired, then suddenly began vomiting right after dinner. His family thought it was just bad food, but minutes later, he collapsed and lost consciousness. At the hospital, doctors confirmed it was a brainstem stroke, rare but extremely dangerous. Fortunately, George survived, only because his family acted quickly instead of waiting. The lesson: not all strokes look the same. If any unusual symptoms appear suddenly, whether it's nausea, confusion, or fainting, always consider the possibility of stroke and call 911 immediately. Don't let the unusual fool you into inaction. And sometimes, the brain gives an even subtler warning: strokes that come and go, vanishing in minutes, but really serving as a message that something bigger is on the way. This is what we call a TIA, a mini stroke, and that's what we'll explore in the next part. 8. TIAO, the mini stroke. With major warnings. Some strokes arrive and leave behind devastating consequences. But others come quickly, then disappear, making many people think, "I'm fine now." That's what we call a TA, transient ischemic attack, often referred to as a mini stroke. Medically, a TIA occurs when a blood vessel in the brain is temporarily blocked, cutting off blood flow for just a few minutes to a few hours. The symptoms look exactly like a real stroke: weakness on one side, slurred speech, blurred vision, or loss of balance. The big difference? They disappear within 24 hours, often in just 1-2 hours. And because they vanish so quickly, people tend to dismiss them. I think of Helen, a 70-year-old woman from Chicago. One morning, while chatting with a neighbor, she suddenly began stuttering and felt her left arm go weak. Within 20 minutes, everything went back to normal. She thought, "I must just be tired," and never went to the doctor. 2 weeks later, she suffered a major stroke, this time far more serious, leaving her with lasting disabilities and months of rehabilitation. The lesson is clear: a TIA is not nothing. It's an alarm bell, a precious opportunity to act before it's too late. Doctors say that 1 in 5 people who experience a TIA will suffer a real stroke within 90 days, unless they get immediate medical evaluation and treatment. And once we understand that a TIA is a warning, we also need to remember, when it comes to stroke, time truly is brain. Every passing minute costs millions of brain cells. So how long is the golden window to save the brain? Let's uncover that in the next part. 9. The golden hour. Why time equals sign brain? In medicine, there's a saying, time is brain, and it's not just a metaphor. Every minute that a stroke goes untreated, nearly 2 million brain cells are lost forever. That's why doctors emphasize the golden hour, that brief but critical window that can mean the difference between recovery and lifelong disability. Within the first 4.5 hours, many patients can receive clot-busting medication, TPA, to dissolve the blockage. In special cases, within 6-24 hours, doctors can perform a mechanical thrombectomy, physically removing the clot. But beyond these windows, the chances of recovery drop sharply, and the damage is often permanent. Patrick, a 62-year-old from Texas, is living proof. When he suddenly felt weakness in his right arm and slurred his words, he called 911 immediately, instead of waiting. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes, and less than an hour later, he received TPA. The result was remarkable. Within days, he was nearly back to normal, with no lasting deficits. Doctors said that if he had waited even one more hour, his life might have looked completely different. The lesson? Never wait to see if symptoms go away. When it comes to stroke, every minute you hesitate means millions of brain cells lost. Quick action can make the difference between full recovery and lifelong disability. And now, you may be wondering, if I or someone I love faces this situation, what should we do immediately, and what should we absolutely avoid? The answers lie in the final section. What to do when stroke strikes. 10. What to do and not to do when stroke strikes. When a stroke hits, every second counts. But in the chaos and fear of the moment, many people don't know what to do. And worse, they do things that actually cause more harm. So here's what you should and shouldn't do when stroke strikes. What you should do: call 911 immediately. Don't hesitate. Don't drive to the hospital yourself. Paramedics not only get you there faster, but also provide life-saving care along the way. Note the time the symptoms began. This detail is critical for doctors to decide the right treatment. If the patient vomits, keep them lying on their side. This keeps the airway clear and prevents choking. Stay by their side and reassure them. Fear can make things worse. Your calm presence is powerful medicine. What you should not do: don't give medications on your own. Some people rush to give aspirin, but if it's a hemorrhagic stroke, that can make bleeding worse. Don't wait to see if it gets better. Every minute of delay means more brain damage. Don't let the patient walk around. They may fall, injure themselves, or worsen the damage already happening in the brain. I remember Evelyn, a 74-year-old from North Carolina. When her husband suddenly slurred his words and collapsed, she immediately called 911 instead of trying to carry him to the car. Because of that choice, paramedics arrived within 10 minutes and started treatment right away. Doctors later said her quick decision was the very reason her husband recovered better than expected. The lesson? When facing stroke, keep it simple. Call for help immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. Remember this: stroke doesn't care about age, gender, or status. It can strike anyone on the most ordinary day of their life. But the gift you have right now is knowledge. Knowledge that can change fate. If one day you notice your hand suddenly feels weak, your words slur, or your vision fades in an instant, you'll no longer dismiss it as something small. You'll remember today and know that this is the moment to act. And here's the beautiful part: this knowledge doesn't just save you. It could save someone you love. A parent, a spouse, even a neighbor. Sometimes it's that tiny bit of awareness that creates a miracle. A life preserved, a smile kept in the family. Before you go, I want you to do 2 simple things. 1. Comment below. I remember, be fast. So this knowledge stays with you. 2. Subscribe and share this video, because you never know who out there might desperately need this information right now. Because sometimes one small share is the greatest gift you can give to a life.